Okay, I said that I was going to start reading some of my stories on videos and then putting them on YouTube. Hadn't done that yet. So this is the first one. It's a short story. Didn't feel like boring you with all 487 pages of Winter's Kiss just yet. This one's called Three to Leave the Field, which it's kind of a sci-fi war story, so I don't know how sci-fi war can bore somebody, but then again, my boyfriend hates Halo. Alright. Oh, sorry for the screen settings too. I've got a little bit of a migraine, so I'm trying to keep the light down. Alright. How the hell are we gonna get past that sniper? Carla groaned, more to herself than to anyone listening over the radio system in her helmet. Her fingers twitched on the hand of her trigger of the massive weapon, the monolith, which was strapped tightly onto her sturdy back. She only had 3 rounds left in the gun, which will not be enough to get us out of this mess, she thought with another scowl. It had been overkill using the weapon on the field, so she had just been using her pistols and her plasma sword during combat, saving her arm cannon for tanks and choppers. Turns out there were more of these than anticipated. Now she and her father were stranded behind a small shelter with a sniper, who was practically invisible to any of the members of her team, staring down his scope at her with almost no ammo in any of her guns. With a small electronic screwdriver clamped in her jaws like a knife, she loosened the lace on her left steel-toe boot, drawn tightly around her mechanical leg, and pulled the thick leather jacket closer to her torso as the cold wind picked up briefly. The rock wall she and her father were currently trapped behind provided less shelter from the elements, currently snow and heavy wind, than it did the enemy fire. Most who knew the woman knew she was part robot, of sorts. She wasn't quite cyborg, so she had no need to hide it. Her robotic parts were strictly confined to her legs, which she had lost in a car accident when she had just turned 14, 6 years ago. The only thing that had to do with electronics in her mind was the military tracking chip that her father had implanted in her sister's and her own brain at birth. The only thing that ever malfunctioned was her mechanical knees and ankles, on occasion, rather than her brain, leaving her open to whatever job opportunity she wanted. Cyborgs were not well accepted in today's society. It was still a fairly new technology, so it was too easy for their minds to go haywire. Who knew what could happen then? Many people had been unintentionally killed in the past by cyborgs running on a shorting circuit in their brains. Carla, Chris panted, rolling over to lie beside her, while loading the last clip into a small pistol, which was only supposed to be used as a last resort. I'm sorry I got you into this, honey. We weren't ready for an attack. I shouldn't have taken you out here. Shut up, Dad. Carla punched him in the arm roughly. On the other side of the clearing, she could see a figure, which could only be Destiny, motioning to her. Carla sighed and spoke easily into her mic on the right side of her mouth. Dusty, we have speakers so you don't have to use sign language. Destiny looked around, startled to hear her twin's voice in her ear. I didn't know if you had one or not, she said sheepishly. Everyone in the field has one. Chris rolled his eyes with a smirk. It's a safety requirement. No one told me that, Destiny pouted in a whiny voice. Yeah, actually they did, Carla smirked, tightening one of the screws in her knee that had come loose while she was running. You were too busy messing with your hair. Chris snorted. That sounds like my daughter. He laughed at Carla, who gave him a dumb look. Well, one of them anyway. Destiny and Carla were what people called typical twins. They were best friends with absolutely nothing but genes in common. Carla had been young and wild her entire life. Even as a child, she had dreamed of this day where she would be out on a mission with her father and her big brother Jones. She had always wanted to be in the action. She was unaffected by the gore seen back at base when a mission went bad, and she had been a better shot than her old man since she was 5. Destiny, however, had chosen her mother's life, peaceful and quiet. She had been a bookworm since she was old enough to read and constantly spent all her time in her mother's small bookshop. She was also a bit of an author, already with 3 books on the market by the age of 16. When she was 14, she went to work as a bookkeeper to help pay for her twin sister's new mechanical legs, and then continued the job even after the payments had been made. Whatever, Destiny huffed. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get all your hair up in this stupid thing? She sighed, adjusting the position of her sleek black helmet. Yes, I do, actually. Carla could picture her sister's expression perfectly, even though her face was covered by the heavily tinted black visor. She would be rolling her bright green eyes and sighing. If she had been standing, she would have put her hand on her hip, slightly cocked out to the side. Unlike her sister, Carla hadn't had any trouble putting her hair back up in the helmet. It was necessary to keep the fact that she and her twin were women confidential, otherwise they may be captured for the enjoyment of the other side. Women weren't generally allowed on the field for this reason, other than for small missions like explosive planting, which was what today was supposed to be. As family members and females, Carla and Destiny weren't technically allowed in the action, and Destiny followed that rule to a T, only coming out of cover when they were absolutely positive it was safe, more because she was terrified than because she was following orders. Carla, on the other hand, was in on everything. As soon as they were ambushed, Jones had handed her off his heavy monolith, and she instantly climbed to one of the best men on the field. Sort of. The commander back at base had allowed her to continue in the fight after seeing that this woman was no average soldier. Anyway, Destiny continued, fidgeting with the uniform leather gloves, Jones said he's going to distract the sniper. At that point, you two will run over and join us. Apparently believing that Destiny was taking too long in explaining the situation, Jack, a big burly man like the rest of the team, suddenly appeared next to Destiny and waved at them. Chris grumbled. Could someone other than my kids be sniper bait, please? He put his hand over his forehead. Oh, shut up, Dad. Carla heard her big brother Jones's voice over the system, repeating what she had already said once today. I'll be fine. Just get the girls back to base safely. Just Destiny. Carla objected, tightening a heavy strap of her monolith again and tucking her pants back into the knee-high boots. I've been given permission to stay in the field, and you'd better believe that I'm staying right here. I'm with Carla. Marquette joined in on the conversation now. I vote she stays. She's a good fighter, logical thinker. Your daughter has a good head on her shoulders, Chris. Wonder where she got it, Jones snickered. Aw, thanks, Sunshine. Carla laughed at Marquette's comment. I didn't know you cared so much about me. Yeah, well, Marquette laughed again. There's no need to vote, Mark. Chris punched Carla in the arm roughly. Carla stays. She's covered my ass more today than any of you bastards have the entire time I've been on this team. Nothing personal, Jack laughed. We've just got our own asses to cover, that's all. You're my dad. Carla punched him in the arm just as hard. Someone has to cover your sorry ass, old man. Stick to the task at hand, please. Commander's calm voice came over the system. I don't want any killed in action to anyone seeing this as a game, understood? Carla winced. She was acting like a new recruit. Even worse, she was distracting the men around her. This was not the way to keep her new position that she had been praying for since childhood. Yes, sir, Jones said, his voice now determined, more than playful as it normally was. Dad, Carla, you two ready to rock? Carla rolled over into a crouch and strapped the monolith on her right arm securely, bending at the elbow and cocking the gun in case she had to use it. She nodded unwaveringly at Chris, who had joined her in the crouch. We're ready, Chris said, placing a hand on the ground like he was playing defense in a football game. As soon as you hear that sniper shoot away from you, you haul ass over to Dusty. Got it? No issues there, Carla smiled, flipping down her visor, making sure to pull up Jones's screen in the corner of her Jones's vision in the corner of her screen to see that her big brother was safe. Marquette, you take out that sniper the second he takes a shot at me. If me or any other member of my family dies today because that son of a bitch shoots us, you can be sure I'll be back to haunt your bastard ass. Jones said, surprisingly serious. Carla knew that her brother didn't screw around when it came to a matter of life and death for his family. I believe that, man, Mark said, readying his own sniper rifle confidently. Don't worry about it, dude. I got you guys covered. Yeah, it's the only reason I'm doing this. The air didn't even have a chance to become tense before Jones was suddenly running out into the open. Instantly, a bullet whizzed by his screen. Go, Jones yelled, waving just in time. Carla jumped to her feet without any hesitation, sprinting across the clearing to her waiting sister, still keeping an eye on her brother's screen. She would know if he fell, though she wasn't exactly sure what she would be able to do about it if he did happen to get himself shot. Even with her legs, she wouldn't be fast enough to reach her brother to save him from further harm by the sniper in time. She was fast, but she was no superhuman. The entire incident only took up about half a minute of the battle, though it seemed to take hours to those involved. No matter how fast Carla ran, the end of the snow-covered clearing seemed to be getting farther and farther away. At one point it even felt as though she was running in slow motion, something completely outlandish for her. She was sure not to run at her full potential sprint, however, choosing to stay back a bit to protect her father if necessary. She had an unfair advantage over him, or anyone else in the field, with her legs. A shot was fired, and a bullet zoomed by her this time, embedding itself in the ground with a thunk, and bringing her attention off of Jones's screen for the first time. As more poofs of snow began to appear around her, it became apparent that Jones was not the sniper's main interest anymore. "I can't see him," Mark yelled over the mic frantically. Carla saw him sweeping the mountainside with his mechanical scope unsuccessfully. "He's got a scope shield up." "Come on, guys," Destiny screamed. "Run faster." Carla zigzagged as more bullets were fired around her, throwing in rolls whenever she thought necessary, but she never stopped. She kept on running, slowly for her. That was until she saw out of her peripheral vision that her father had fallen. Before she knew that what she was doing could cost her life, she stopped dead in her tracks. "Dad," she yelled, turning back to him. The shot seemed to move like something out of an action movie, a classical romanticized screen where you could watch as the bullet hit the target. Carla could swear that time had nearly stopped as she watched the sniper's shot nail her directly in the forehead. Carla grunted as the power of the shot forced her head backwards, quicker than the human body was physically intended to bend. The helmet that had protected her from death split in two equal halves and landed at her feet. Silence fell over the field as though everyone implicated in the dispute was watching her as a river of golden-colored curly hair floated down to her waist. Shit. Enraged and empowered with the pain of her head and her neck, Carla swung her monolith up to position, with only one arm. "You mother..." The rest of her sentence was drowned out by the booming shots of plasma, hardly forcing her back against her stance she used to support the kick of the gun. She fired all 3 thunderous rounds into the mountainside where the sniper's shots had come from, only stopping when she had run out of ammo. The silence remained even after the echoes of the blasts had finally died down. Chris groaned and clutched his shoulder. The fresh snow around him stained a scarlet red. Carla, slightly blinded by pain in the back of her neck, rushed back to her father with Mark and Jack close behind, covering her. "I'm all right." Chris climbed to his feet as Carla helped him back to safety of the rock wall that Destiny was tucked behind with Jones now. "Well, that's one way to do it," Mark laughed slightly, helping Chris to lean against the stone slab protecting them. "Scope shields," Carla spat. "Fucking cheater." We need a medic and a dragon down here now," Jones said into the mic as Carla examined her father. "2 injured and another back to base. 3 total to leave the field. Over." "Roger, we understand your situation," the pilot of the Dragon aircraft replied calmly. "We cannot land the Dragon in the terrain where you're positioned. Is it possible to move the injured to the top of the cliff? Over." "Destiny and I can get there." Carla nodded and winced. "You sure?" Jones looked at her worried, moving her hair out of her face to look at the freshly formed bruise on her forehead. "Positive," she said, smacking his hand away. "Whiplash and a small boo-boo. Nothing I can't handle." She smirked, pulling her leg up to tighten the screw once again. "More like a crack and a concussion." Jones rolled his eyes and snorted. "Dad?" "Well, there's no bullet in the arm," the medic that had rappelled from the top of the cliff above them confirmed as he wrapped Chris's arm tightly and wound a sling around his neck. It went clean through. "I can walk." Chris gritted his teeth together as he stood up. "Affirmative," Jones replied over the radio. Three will meet you on the plain on the top of this cliff. Over." "Roger that. Moving into position." "Let's get a move on," Carla said as the medic taped a bag of snow around her neck with a brace. She tightened the screw in her leg once more and jumped up again, thinking of a more permanent solution for the loose screw that she would fix in when she got back to base later. Now that she was technically injured, she had no choice but to return to headquarters for the day. She probably wouldn't be allowed back on the field for another month now that the other side had seen that she was female. "Well, I hope you're happy, you stupid son of a cocksucking bitch," she cursed the dead sniper in her mind. Scowling to herself, she grabbed another helmet from Jones and forced it down over her head, leaving her hair out carelessly. What was the point of being discreet now? A supply guard dropped another 3 clips for the monolith at her feet before stalking up the others and quickly moving on. The small action had cheered her up surprisingly. It felt good to know that she was still in the action for just a little bit longer. "Here we go," she thought with a smirk as she popped the cylinder-shaped plasma clip back into the compartment that opened in the top. She snapped it shut once again and bent quickly at the elbow to cock it. "Let's roll." Chris got up after Jones. Destiny stood in the middle of the group, her little pistol at the ready as Marquise and Jack surrounded Chris and her from both sides. Carla took up the rear, and Jones peered around the corner of the rock slab in the front. "Clear," he nodded in relief. "Let's move out." A small human caravan darted across the snow to the only way up the cliff on the side of the field that they were all on at the time. No one fired, but quickly a small group with plasma swords drawn and at the ready followed them up the path. "Jones, rear," Carla yelled, pulling her own sword out to confront the 5 oncomers. She took off the monolith and strapped it to her back once again. It would be useless in a sword fight anyway. When you held the sword, the shield that it created would protect you from just about everything but tank fire and sniper shots. She flipped her sword open and took a stance, both hands on the hilt. Before the one in front could reach her, however, Jones and Mark were in front of her. "Get the others to the top of the cliff," Jones said, whipping out his sword and twirling it expertly. "We won't let them get past us. Now go." Carla, disappointed, sighed, but she needed no second telling. She had no doubt in her big brother's skill with the plasma sword. He had been the one to train her. "Let's go," she waved Destiny and Chris as she took off up the steep path. They reached the top to find the dragon already waiting for them. "Hurry," a man waved them on from the open side of the armored plate of machinery. Just when it looked like they were about to make it safely to the aircraft without interference, a large man from the group with the swords jumped up onto the ledge in front of them, propelled to the height by the jetpack on his back. Destiny gasped and fell to the ground. "You two get to the dragon now." Chris whirled around to face the man as they both drew their swords. Carla pulled Destiny to her feet as the 2 massive men collided. Chris groaned in pain as the shock from the blow ran up his injured shoulder. Carla heaved and exhausted Destiny up over her shoulders and dragged her to the dragon, leaving her and the monolith in the hands of the man before shoving her hair up into the helmet and darting back to where the 2 men battled, whipping her sword out as she ran. "What are you doing?" The man yelled for her to come back. "If you think for one moment I'm going to leave my dad out there when I'm in better condition to fight than he is, you've got another thing coming," she growled, accelerating her speed to the impossible for the regular human as she saw her father fall to the ground once more. The man raised his sword high, ready to kill Chris, who lay before him panting. Suddenly, with a violent roar, Carla crashed into the man as he was about to proceed with his final strike. The man was knocked violently to the ground, and the 2 rolled down the hill uncontrollably like lifeless bodies. Carla groaned as she smashed into a tree roughly, just barely stopping her from falling over the ledge of the cliff. She jumped up. She saw the man jump up to his feet and whip out a small hunting knife, chucking it full force at her. Carla grabbed the tree and swung off the ledge out of the way of the projectile, kicking off the rock ledge underneath her and swinging up onto the cliff again, nailing the large man powerfully right into the chest and sending him flying backwards before rolling to her feet. She ran for her sword, which had fallen out of her hands when she collided with the man, but suddenly the man lunged at her, taking her to the ground with a massive tackle. Howling like a demon in rage, Carla nailed him in the side with the gnarly 3-inch punch, feeling his ribs crack under the pressure of her fist. The man coughed and fell back as Carla reached for her sword once again, this time succeeding. She and the man both rose to their feet, swords in hand as they gazed across the space briefly. Then suddenly they charged, crashing into each other like lightning. Sparks flew from the sword as they clashed when Carla blocked a blow from the man expertly. The same when the man blocked a power strike from Carla, actually losing a bit of footing despite his great size advantage over the woman. Seeing this, Carla attempted another strong blow downwards once again, only to be thrown back into the snow. "You may have speedy legs, but ultimately you fight like a girl," the man laughed. Carla wondered if he was just taunting her or if he actually knew that she was a female with robotic limbs. Deciding that it didn't matter, she charged again, bellowing like a beast as she raised her sword above her head, swinging it down with a hefty attack that the man blocked with only one arm. Taking a chance of his left arm hanging carelessly at his side, she slammed her elbow directly into his visor, cracking the screen. The man yelled and stumbled backwards, ripping his helmet away from his bloodied face. His hair was short and black, spiked up into a hedgehog kind of look. Rage filled his black eyes as he looked fiercely back up to her. Carla, making the mistake of thinking she finally had gotten somewhere with her attacks, let the man charge her this time, only to be backed against the wall as the man struck back faster than before. Either he had been going easy on her or he was just getting desperate. Carla had a feeling it was more because he had been going easy on her than him being worried about his defeat. She kept his immense attacks at bay for a bit, blocking with every bit of skill that she had in her, but suddenly he knocked the sword away from her body, leaving her open and defenseless as the man pinned her to the stone wall behind her with the sword driving through her left arm. Carla screamed in pain as she felt the burning plasma amputating her arm excruciatingly. He backed away with a laugh. "You sadistic son of a bitch," she hissed, clenching her teeth together as the pain started to distort her vision. "You even sound like a girl." He threw his head back and laughed again, picking a bit of glass out of his forehead as he looked at her. "What's the matter? Haven't your balls dropped yet?" Carla took deep breaths through her nose as the world around her began to fade in and out of focus. She thought about her mom, safely back at headquarters, her dad, her twin sister, hopefully safe in the Dragon heading back to base, and her big brother Jones, the best gunman, the best swordsman, the best everything. He would have never allowed himself to be in this predicament. No matter how hard Carla is trained, she could never beat Jones, but somehow she was okay with that. Wasn't that how it was supposed to be? The big brother was supposed to be better than the little sister. That way he could protect her. In the end, Carla didn't know what it was that caused her to stay conscious. Maybe it was the cold snow on the back of her neck that was running down her back. Maybe it was the rage of knowing that she would never use her natural left arm again. Or maybe it was the fear of death and the desire to live on for her family. Either way, Carla surprised the man by grasping onto the edge of his sword and pulling it out of the stone behind her, slicing off her arm the rest of the way in the process. It fell from her body and landed uselessly in the snow at her feet. The man looked surprised as he backed up again, and then took a stance as Carla raised her sword above her head. Right before she struck, he pulled out another sword, blocking the downward strike before it sliced through the rest of his body. It was a weird feeling to have your brain tell your arm to grasp onto something and have nothing happen. She had been in this position before, willing her body to rise from the hospital bed and realizing that her legs weren't moving, and then upon further investigation, realizing that her legs weren't even attached to her body anymore. Recalling it, Carla couldn't remember if she had thought about moving her left arm at all. She was powered by rage and fear, an influential combination, and she did not intend to let this fight drag on much longer. The next time the man made a stab at her, Carla not only blocked the blow, but she completely disarmed him, sending his sword flying over the side of the cliff. The man stood in astonishment for a moment as the dragon touched down behind him. Chris and Destiny looked out at her with shocked and horrified faces as the man fell to his knees in front of her, loosening his collar and exposing his neck, waiting for her to take his head. The look on his face was somber and humbled as he awaited his destruction by her hand. He looked up at her when she did nothing. "What's the matter?" he asked her once again, this time without the laughter that had been there the first time. "You beat me. You chopped off your own fucking arm to do so. Now don't tell me you're not man enough to kill me." Carla paused. She had never been in a situation like this one before. Here this man knelt in front of her, waiting for her to kill him. The only lie she had ever taken had been by force and in self-defense. She would have felt like a murderer if she had killed this man now. Growling lowly, she threw the sword in the snow and ripped off her helmet. The wind caught her hair and she glared down at the man with fiery eyes dancing in delight as the man's expression changed from curiosity to complete disbelief. "I'm man enough to resist," Carla said deeply. She thought about saying something more, but rather she calmly walked back to the blood-covered wall, retrieving her useless arm for what reason she didn't know later on. She knew that her arm would be replaced with a mechanical limb, twice as strong, just like her legs. Mentally, she prepared herself for the pain that awaited her in the dragon when the medic did whatever he had to. Most likely clamp off her artery as a temporary fix before matching a mechanical arm in the stock of limbs with her right arm back at base. 3 mechanical limbs, she thought, shaking her head as she looked at her arm once more with a sigh before glaring at the man. It's a good thing that this is what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. Any possible employer would turn me away without explanation now. The kneeling man on the ground watched her with continued inquisitiveness as she clipped her sword back onto her belt and held her limp arm by the wrist. You're a chick. He shook his head as he rose to his feet. Oh, you noticed that, did you? Carla laughed shortly. Slinging her left arm over her right shoulder, she walked past him with her chin held high, climbing into the dragon and leaving him there to stare in wonder as the aircraft took off again. You didn't kill him? Destiny looked at her goggle-eyed, keeping her eyes away from her twin's arm, or lack thereof. It's not all about the killing, Dusty. Chris put a hand on Carla's right shoulder with a proud look on his face as the medic examined her freshly nubbed limb. There's an unmentioned code of honor between men. Most men nowadays ignore it. Carla has just demonstrated that it still exists, even if others refute its being. Well, what about the other guy then? Dusty leaned back against the seat she was in. He honored the code too, right? Probably because he was too shocked to do anything but stare with his jaw on the ground. Carla grinned, focusing on everything but what the mechanic was doing. Okay. 3 mechanical limbs. The medic shook his head, trying to be cheerful for her. You're practically cyborg. Much to the surprise of everyone, Carla laughed out loud. Practically cyborg, she repeated. I guess I can live with that.